Hello and welcome to Never Outdated. This is the podcast for technology and business leaders who want to stay ahead and stay relevant as we enter the AI era. My name is Amit Singh, and today we're talking about what makes an AI leader worth following. Now, this episode was sparked by a conversation that occurred inside the AI Leadership Academy, which is a private community that I run for technology and business leaders. It's hosted on School. We have, at time of recording, 70 members in there so far and growing daily. And in there, we generally discuss our experiences and learnings with AI from a leadership and people and culture perspective, less so from a tech perspective, though that does often get a lot of airtime as well. There's also a bunch of free resources in there. I'll include a link in the show notes for anyone who would like to join and be part of that community. Now, back to the point. I asked a very simple question in there the other day, which was, what is the single most important skill an AI leader needs today? And I got a whole bunch of answers, a whole bunch of comments, and that's what sparked this episode. So some people chose things like business value, others chose organizational change, some were more concerned with adaptability or culture. But what struck me was that all the comments really made it clear that it's not just really one skill. The reality is that AI leadership is about blending multiple skills together and applying them just at the right time. One member described it as being part strategist, part technologist, part storyteller, and part cat herder. And the mix always changes, but it always comes back to the same core thing, which is business value. So let's start there and dig into what all this really means. Now, I always come back to the same story. You may have heard me tell this before. Early on in my career, I was presenting a technology strategy to the CIO of a large apparel brand here in Australia. I put a lot of effort into it. The slides were polished, the models were clear, the logic was sound. But halfway through the presentation, he stopped me and he looked me in the eye and he said, "If we do this, will we sell more t-shirts?" And that was the moment when everything shifted for me, because it cut through all the detail and reminded me that business value is the only outcome that actually matters. In his world, selling more t-shirts was the measure of success, and everything else is just noise. Now, of course, there's a little bit more nuanced than that, but he made his point. And to this day, I always think about the equivalent of selling more t-shirts, be it technology or AI strategy that I'm working on, or any endeavor for business. You need to be able to measure it in business terms and have metrics that are that can be surfaced at the executive level, and that actually move the needle in what the organizational strategy may be. So that's why business value just has to be the anchor, and everything else is just pretty much noise. But here's the thing. Showing business value on a slide is one thing, but driving it through an organization is something entirely different. Another member of the academy talked about one of their experiences leading a transformation. And they said, and this was specifically around AI, and they said that proving business value was the easy part for them. Everyone could see it. Everyone could see the value it was going to bring. But the harder part was getting people to change. And I have to agree, because in my own work, I've seen a handful of AI projects stall, not because there's anything wrong with the technology. We know the technology is incredibly powerful, but because people weren't really enabled or able to embrace it in the way that was envisaged or required to unlock the value or deliver the ROI promised. Now, it reminds me of the law of diffusion of innovation. Now, bear with me here, but you may be familiar with it. It's the bell curve, where on one side you've got the innovators and the early adopters. Then in the middle, you've got the early and late majority. Then at the far end, you've got the laggards. And I first came across this model when working with organizations on cloud adoption. because it was really evident that there were some people who would get the value of cloud straight away. They'd get excited, they'd start innovating and doing things early. But then the bulk of the organization would hold back. Now, if you don't get the early majority to get on board, and the early majority need a bit of proof, they need a bit of certainty, they need to see the evidence that this thing works before they got on board. Now, if you don't get them on board, forget about the vast majority and absolutely forget about the laggards. The laggards are the people who will wait till the absolute last moment, and when they've got no other choice is when they will actually decide to do the thing. So this is all about people and change. This is all about how people need the support, different groups of people on that bell curve need different types of support in order to embrace the new thing. Early adopters and innovators, by nature, enjoy experimenting. They have a higher appetite for risk. They're willing to try things to satisfy their own curiosity. And it gives you a false sense of success when you get the first, I think it's 17% of people, or maybe it was like 10% of people using the new technology. And you think, oh, we're off to a great start. This is, we're up and running. And the reality is, if you fail to, or if you believe that the same effort it took to get the first lot of people to jump on board will get the next lot of people to jump on board, you are going to be sorely disappointed. Next group of people need different, they need to be driven and motivated in a different way. And then the next group of people need to be motivated in a different way again. And this is why change leadership can be much more difficult than actually proving value, because it's about execution. It's not just about building a vision and forecasting results. Spreadsheets may add up, but people, they don't really move in straight lines. And that brings me to the next point that needs a lot of attention, and it's about people. So one of the members mentioned that they work with, they work at a not-profit, and budgets are always tight, and leaders need to, be able to prove the value before making any investments, which is aligned with what we talked about. However, another really important point came up through that discussion, and it was that sometimes more costly than exhausted budgets is exhausted people. And I've seen this before as well. Through my years of working in transformation, I've learned that you need people not only on board and understanding the value and all of the rest of it, you need them to be able to work through ambiguity. When it's transformational change and change at scale, they need to do things that are different to the way they were before. There's usually a lot of unknowns. You can't plan every single step. And so usually it requires a bit of discretionary effort on the part of not just people running the program, but employees and people on board, on the team. People need to go a little further, they need to think a little harder, and they need to embrace the unknown. But the danger is, if they're pushed too far, if people are on the verge of burnout, and they're starting to feel drained, they stop making the more bold decisions. They don't give you the discretionary effort. They retreat back to the safest options. They take the path of least resistance. And what that means is you end up with mediocrity, if you're lucky. In more extreme cases, people start to push back, and sometimes it's active, but more often than not, it's actually passive, where they will choose to do the easy work in their day-to-day jobs. They'll do the BAU work, and they'll say, I've run out of time to work on the transformation. And then your transformation stalls and atrophies. And in the absolute worst cases, they simply head for the door. And that's why burnout is not just a human cost, it's a strategic risk that needs to be factored in. Transformation requires people who are energized enough to work through the uncertainty. And without that, you're never going to get any more than average results. Again, if you're lucky. So, What is the takeaway from all of this? It's not that there's one skill that matters more than other skills. It's that leadership is about blending the right mix of those skills together at the right time. Some days you're the strategist, showing the big picture, connecting the dots to business value. Other days you're the change agent, helping teams overcome resistance and navigate uncertainty. And most of the time, you're the learner yourself, adapting quickly, asking better questions, and adapting and shifting as things keep changing. Which brings me to the bigger point. Leadership is not a trait you're born with, and it's not a title that guarantees respect. Leadership is a discipline. It's a practice. It's a discipline of showing up consistently, of making sense of complexity, and guiding people through it. It's about asking sharper questions and holding competing priorities without losing clarity, without losing the North Star of where you're headed. And so with AI, this discipline of leadership matters more than ever because the context is moving faster than most people can keep up with. And leaders who do figure out how to treat leadership as a discipline and they lean into that are the ones who most likely going to get the best results out of AI at scale versus leaders who maybe just treat it as a badge or a role and as a normal job, which I don't believe that it is. So, the question, what is the single most important skill for an AI leader? It is tempting to say business value and driving change or organizational change, but it's really all of them. And it's not really about any one particular skill. You do need to have this collection of skills, but more important than all of that is treating leadership as a discipline and knowing what skills to lean into at the right point in time to achieve the right outcome you need, depending on where you are on your journey and where your people are and where your organization is. Now, this is the kind of conversation that's happening quite regularly inside the AI Leadership Academy. If you want to be part of it, and this is the kind of thing that genuinely excites and interests you, then I do want you to be in there, and I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to join, and it's completely free. There's also the AI Strategy Playbook is a really valuable, one of my most prized assets that I've made available for free in there. So jump in and have a look around. And that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you for listening. As always, stay ahead and stay relevant, and I'll catch you in the next one.